as we kick it off live. But Jennifer, no, it is so good to see you today and have you on the Books for Guys podcast as you and I exchanged some emails over the last couple of months getting ready to talk about your books. And so it's great to meet you.
Well, it's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you are up in Canada, is that right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Southern Alberta.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, I'm not sure who our furthest guest has been yet. We've had a few in Canada. I'm not sure, I guess from where I'm at, I'm in Nashville, as everyone knows, but we've had a few people from Canada and they've been great conversations. So I'm sure this one will be as well. But no, Jennifer, you have a book series out,
Yes.
and you have your latest book that came out this summer. But before we get into that, just give a little bit of backstory on just kind of how you got into your career of becoming a writer.
I've been writing for over 35 years. I started out writing because I needed an outlet. I was going through, the school bullying, being very introverted, and I just needed that outlet. I couldn't find anything to read that really sparked joy. And at the time, my mom bought me a typewriter because I'm that old. And I started writing as a hobby. And then it became a passion, an obsession at times. Now it's just cheaper than therapy. But I had never shared any of my work until 2019 when I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD. And then I started to think, well, what if my writing is my special interest? And it gave me the courage to send my first book I just finished the manuscript for the first book in my series. And I said, I'm going to send it to an editor. The worst they can say is it sucks. And the editor came back and said, this doesn't suck. You should publish. So 2 years later, I did.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's awesome. So you got diagnosed with autism way later in life then.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a lot harder, I think, from what I've heard. It's a lot harder to diagnose women because we tend to internalize and mask it.
interesting, interesting. Well, that's a very intriguing story, and thank you for sharing that. That's I've never heard of that before. That's incredible, but it's so cool that again you're writing and just kind of your story behind why you decided to start writing and publishing. That's it's just amazing.
Yeah, it kind of became like trying to understand the world around me. And, I honestly felt like an alien dropped off on this planet and I couldn't figure things out. So I would live vicariously through my characters. And if I was getting bullied in school or if I was having difficulties in other areas and stuff, and I would make my characters go through those situations so that I could see how they could come out in different scenarios at the end. And it kind of helped me to deal with things.
Yeah, no, very interesting. So obviously you said you've been writing for a long time. Were you always a reader as well? Or were you instead of reading, you decided just to type things out and create these stories?
I've been a reader too, but I was struggling at that time. There wasn't a lot of middle grade books. And at that time, my mom was going through her Bachelor of Arts. She was majoring in English. And we used to drive out to our grandparents' farm every weekend. I have 4 younger brothers. And so they had to sit in the back and I got to sit in the front because I was old enough I could read her university books. So at that same time, I was started reading like Joseph Conrad, Thomas Hardy, Atwood, Lawrence, lots of Shakespeare. And that was at that time that I started to write. So I think that, because I became interested in those types of books at a very young age, the stuff that was available that was my age reading was not interesting to me.
Interesting. It's kind of funny you say that because that's really and I share this with a lot of guests I talk to. That's really kind of the main thing behind Books for Guys is actually getting books in the hands of young folks that they're actually interested in reading. And
Yes.
in that way, if you read something you're interested in, it kind of leads you to reading more and more because
Mhm.
obviously you're like, hey, I want to keep doing this. It's a lot more difficult when you're told to read something you just don't have much interest in. So I'm really glad you made that point because that's kind of my goal is I want to ask people like, "Hey, what are you interested in? Great.
Mhm.
Let's get a book that you can read that you'll actually like." And it's cool. Like that's why I talk to so many different authors who write so many different things because I want to provide as many options and kind of spotlight work from different people in case someone's interested. They can say, "Hey, Jennifer's book looked really interesting," and I'd be like, "Great, let's get it to you so you can read it."
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know I've gotten a lot of recommendations now to read. So I've had to buy 3 bookcases. This is 2 of my 3 bookcases to fill with my to be read list. But yeah, I about the only things I don't like to read or write are mystery because I can never figure out who done it, or I figure it out in the beginning and then it's just boring. I get bored really easily, so I gotta keep my
Yeah.
mind going.
Yeah.
History makes me fall asleep, and although I'm okay with reading books, if they got a lot of adventure, maybe they got a little bit of romance in them, but I don't like spicy romance, and I don't
Yeah.
write it.
We're kinda the same. I really don't find much interest in either of those none of those topics either, but, some people do. That's why they're written, I guess. But,
Yeah.
no, let's talk about your book series, though. So you have is it 4 books now in this
So far, yeah,
series?
4
Yeah,
books
yeah.
it's a magic fantasy, action adventure, some supernatural suspense kinda all sprinkled in for good measure because, again, I get bored. So I
Yeah,
like a lot of things happening, but, I always say that, yes, it's geared towards young adult, new adult, but I've had everybody from my 8-year-old son up to octogenarian reading my novels. All that means is it's got a few swear words, it's got a lot of that action, that adventure, it's got hints of romance, but there's no sex scenes.
yeah,
So, it's kind of appeals to a broader audience and stuff.
yeah.
I have had it's intended for both girls and guys, there's no limits on who. The breakdown of my series is that there's our world, our time, and there's a coexisting magical realm, but there's a veil that separates us. We can't see across this veil, we don't have magic, but these creatures that do can and have, and they've been the source of inspiration for our fairy tales and mythologies and monster stories and what have you. And my main character is a young man by the name of Callum Walker. He was born with the ability to use magic. He doesn't know why. He's trying to make the most of it. He's able to cross that veil, or rather, he's dragged across that veil. He becomes embroiled in this magical realm, learning about this world and the beings therein. Adventures ensue, and we follow him through my series as he's trying to figure out who he is, where he belongs, because he's too magic for here, too human for there, and master these abilities to survive.
Interesting, interesting. So and your first book of the series was published when again?
2021.
2021. Okay,
Yeah.
and you were talking about though, like you've created these characters and these stories based off a little bit of your experience. Obviously, you've kind of like transitioned it into a different type of world and different characters. But I guess what was your thought process on like because I'm interested in your writing process. Like when you sit down to write your first book, I guess what were you taking from? Because this would have been, was it a long time ago that you were taking memories from like growing up and then incorporating into this story? Or like, how did you come up with the character and then just the whole world that you created?
Yeah, no, I didn't intentionally set out to write myself into my character. It was pointed out to me years later by a reader that my series arc, trying to find where you belong and, figure things out, who you are and all that kind of mirrors my own struggles with autism and trying to figure out my place in society. I didn't realize I had to have somebody point that out to me. The I've always kind of thought about magic being synonymous with medieval times, so like Merlin and the Knights of the Round Table. And so there on our side of the veil, we have our world, which is, nowadays, our time and date. But on the other side of the veil, it's very medieval because they don't need technology. They have magic and they live more off the land and they have castles and kings and it's very medieval type.
Yeah.
As far as my character, he just sort of developed. I had an idea of like a young Merlin before he became Merlin the magician, this unlikely hero, what would he have known? How would he have known if his magical powers started to manifest and he had nobody to talk to? But living in our day and age, trying to hide this, trying to figure it out, trying to do the best they can. And, what would that person be like?
Yeah.
As far as plotting out my book, the original rough draft for my novel was rewritten to be more in line with what it is now. My initial thing was completely different. It was more of a monster hunting kind of book, but it morphed into something bigger and then became a series. But
Yeah.
I never really plot big, or I never used to. I knew where to begin, where to end, and somewhere in the middle needed to shift. But as I've gotten deeper into my series and I'm working on my 5th book now,
Wow.
I'm having to do a lot more in this chapter. This is definitely what I need to present. Everything else can be filler, but I need to get this point in and then kind of following along, like what is the main points that I need to lead me to the end.
Yeah, super cool. I'm so not creative. So like if someone told me to like create a story, it would take so much effort to like create something that is entertaining. But you seem to have this gift of being able to create these characters and worlds to where like although they're not real per se, you feel like they're real because you're reading it and you're just in the story and you're figuring out what's going on. So it's super
Yes.
impressive and again just so intriguing that you can create this to where someone like myself can read it and be like I'm in the story. I know what's going on, like I can see it, I can visualize it. I know the characters, and especially going on now, you're writing your 5th book
Yes.
in the series. I'm sure people are like, they're just following along like, like a show or a movie with a sequel, like, they wanna know what's next, so it's super cool that you're able to continue creating the next phase of this character's adventure. Do you know how many books you think you'll do, or does it kinda are you kinda going with the flow and don't kinda decide when it's time to make a change or not?
I know where the series is gonna end. I haven't settled on a specific number. It's gonna be somewhere between 6 and 9. I don't wanna go much longer than that,
Yeah,
just because I kinda wanna do other projects as well. So you kinda get so in depth in this one world that, and this one character that you're kinda like, "I don't want it to become boring." You know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah, it's kinda like you love a show and then sometimes they make, like, 1 too many seasons or,
Yes.
it's kind of a forced, just because I don't know, you're trying to get everything out of it, but sometimes it's good to leave a little bit left on the bone and people can just kinda create what they want, but that was gonna be my next question for you was, um, are do you is this the sole project you're working on now and then you'll shift when it's time, or do you have a few that you're trying to balance and different stories that you're trying to work on?
Yeah, no, I've got a couple of ideas that I'm toying with. I'm sort of plotted out and working on a rough draft for a dystopian Robin Hood meets Romeo and Juliet with hints of Hunger Games. There's still not going to be any spicy romance in there, but there is romance, young adult, PG rated. But I'm also toying with a Back to the Future, Body Snatchers kind of War of the Worlds
Yeah,
combo.
yeah. So cool, so cool. What's your, like, day-to-day look like when writing stories? Like, are you someone that has a routine to where you're like, "Hey, I wake up, my normal day, I spend time writing from this hour to this hour," or is it more ad hoc where you're like, "When I get creative and I'm in the zone, I sit down and do it, and then I take breaks in between," but what's your personal, like, plan of action when writing these?
I try to write a lot of times when my kids are at school, so
Yeah,
the house is quiet. I have to do my chores first. I have to set an alarm because I will become completely engrossed in my writing and I will forget to eat, sleep, drink, everything. I'll forget to
yeah,
pick kids up from school if I don't set an alarm for myself. But if I'm not writing, I'm thinking about writing. My brain never stops. I have a notebook beside my bed because I won't be able to sleep unless if I have an idea rolling around there, I'll have to get up and
jot
write
it
it
down.
down. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. So you were like it's so cool because when you talk to anyone who's passionate about anything, no matter if it's writing or something else, like their brain never really stops thinking about it. I'm kind of the same way, just kind of with books for guys. Like I'll take notes on my phone, I'll speak a note, because I don't want to forget
Yeah.
to try and reach out to somebody or to post something. And it's just it. But that means you really enjoy what you do. Like you love writing, you love creating these stories, and that just means you have a passion for it, which is awesome.
Yeah, and I try to write every day because I have 2 young boys, it's difficult to find the time, like, on the weekends or if I'm doing book signings or events and stuff, but I do try to get in, even if it's just an hour of writing or taking notes or plotting my next book and stuff. I know I've had a lot of people also ask me if I would love to see my books in movies or TV, and
Yeah.
it's just like, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'd want some control over, you know,
How it goes.
some of it, yeah. So, in all honesty, when I'm writing, I see it as a movie in my head, and I don't have to pay for those special effects.
Yeah. You're taking all these questions right out of my mouth because that was one of
I'm
my
sorry?
things too, is like the way you're describing it, I feel like I could see a series, on Netflix or something about this story, which does lead me to a question. I've asked a few different people this because as you become successful in a series and you have a character in a book, is it do you write sometimes out of responsibility more so than enjoyment? And it could be equal, but because people are following, do you feel a responsibility to have to write another book to kind of satisfy what your fans and people who are following you want to have? Or do you feel comfortable in like, hey, this is my work. If I want to keep writing, I will. If not, I'm going to move on, but it doesn't really matter. But it's always like that. I always curious, like the responsibility versus the enjoyment,
Mhm.
or do you have a little bit of both of that?
I guess it depends on the process of the writing. The rough draft, I definitely enjoy that creative aspect. I need that. It's like my breath of life, I need to have that creative aspect. When it comes to editing, That is grueling, it's torturous, it's like trying to study history and writing it all down in pencil and paper and erasing it and then doing it again. It's meticulous and torturous is the only way
Yeah.
to describe it, but
Everyone says the same thing, the
yeah.
editing, they're like, "I hate editing, I hate the editing process." It's like the one thing that just is the most annoying, but you
Yes.
have to do it, so
You do, and I think that those people who do publish without getting an editor, they're not doing themselves any service. I've seen some books out there that have not been edited or haven't been edited effectively, and it does show. I mean, if you've got a good story, that's great. A lot of people will overlook typos, and you're not always gonna have typos no matter what. It's like typing an email or something. As soon as you press send, that's when you see them. But, if it's really badly written, unless they've got a really good story, most people will overlook those grammatical things,
yeah.
but not everybody.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Yeah, it's just I've learned so much about the process of writing a book and just some tips on how to write it and like kind of where to start and just kind of some points along the way to focus on. Just again, as someone who hasn't written a book, it's all very I don't know, it's just awesome. I'm a fan, I'm a fan of books. I'm a fan of reading. So this is where like my passion comes in is just talking to individuals like yourself and learning, your story and how you got into writing and just kind of the future of your work. But if you don't mind me asking, so I'm super curious about this, like being diagnosed with autism, has it given you a platform to be able to kind of like use that to inspire others that maybe, again, I don't know what all you've been able to do with it, but it's just super cool to me that you got diagnosed so late in life and have been able to carve out this path for yourself that's super successful. But do you have people that reach out that maybe also have autism and they're just curious of like how you dealt with it, kind of like what you do, but
Yeah, I don't make it a secret because it's part of me, it's part of my creative process, it's who I am. For me, it made total sense looking back. I was like, "Oh, I just have a different brain, that's all." And it's
yeah.
allowed me permission to I've given myself permission to ask for clarification when I don't know something and to understand myself and that, I've always been a creative what if thinker, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that, my brain never shuts off and I'm constantly thinking, so I've been constantly creative. I love it when people reach out and ask questions. I've been fortunate, I'll have messages here and there when I first, made it known that I do have autism and ADHD because it's not a secret. I want people to understand what it means. I don't know entirely what it means. I did have a lot of people reach out and say, well, they're wondering if they do. What kind of things did I notice? And I wasn't diagnosed until after both my sons were diagnosed. So, and a lot of the people who are reaching out to me are women,
Mm,
and they're wondering because it is so much harder for a woman to be diagnosed just because we hide it.
yeah.
It's more internalized and less
Yeah.
visible. I know I do get a few people every now and then who will say things like, well, you don't look autistic. And I was like, I mean, a genius doesn't look like a genius because it's all in their head, right?
Yeah.
Unless you start talking to them and then you see those behaviors and stuff. But
Yeah.
another comment that I've been getting from people is, oh, we're all a little on the spectrum. And I'd be like, okay, it's not like we're growing extra arms for one thing, it is, and but it's an exaggeration of symptoms and stuff. Our brains never stop. But on that same note, I always tell them, I mean, if you're driving down the highway and you're in a semi and then you got somebody on a motorbike, you're
Yeah.
both drivers technically, but you're gonna
Yeah.
have different challenges.
Yeah.
You're driving
Yeah.
through a hailstorm, you're probably gonna be okay in your big semi
Not the
truck.
guy on the
But
bike.
yeah, exactly. So, yes, we're both human. We both have aspects that are similar, but when they're exaggerated to the point where they interfere with your life, that's
Yeah.
what, it
Yeah.
becomes more.
Well, you explained that extremely well. My wife, so she's a type 1 diabetic, but she's also had she's very fit, always eats right. And obviously, like type 1, you don't really know what causes it. But people are always like, you don't look like you'd be diabetic. And she's like, well, that doesn't mean anything. Like,
Yeah.
can't help it. But
Thank you. I've been working really hard not to.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So she's said something similar, like, okay,
Yeah.
you
I
know,
try to keep in mind that it's a lack of like it's a misunderstanding or a lack of information, knowledge,
yes.
and I try to educate as much as possible and advocate for both myself and my kids. But just because a person has autism, like I explained it to my kids how, it's like your computer is running and you've got every program open and you open your web browser and you've got millions of tabs, every single possibility. You've got music playing here, video playing here. You're trying to find this file. Everything's all running at once. Every now and then it becomes overwhelming and you get the little swirly wheel of death and you have to restart. But you can multitask like nobody's business. You just can't filter anything.
Thank you for sharing that because I just think it's so cool. Not cool, but like for you to be use your platform for if people have questions and to realize like some people just don't know. And sometimes it is frustrating that they don't because you're like, I don't know how to explain this to you, but
Yeah.
thank you for asking. But your platform is really important. And I just think it's really cool to spotlight that and for you to be able to share that because someone may be listening and they may have a really positive impact on maybe what they're struggling with and maybe they don't know. And so, no, Jennifer, thank you for sharing that. But no, so I've got one more question for you. And obviously, so we're going to have all your books on the Books for Guys website, by the way, too. So people will have a link to it and they can go purchase them if they
Perfect.
want to. And I'm sure there will be several people interested. But I always ask this. You've always been a reader, so this may be hard because you've probably read a lot of books. But what's a book or two that have had a positive impact on you, either personally or professionally? And then if someone asks you for a book recommendation, what's a book or two that you like to recommend to other people?
Goodness, I'm recently reading the Brandon Sanderson Stormlight series. I'm about 3 books in. They're big, they're really thick, like that thick.
Okay.
But I've also read the Scythe series. I really liked that one. Growing up, I read a lot of Dean Koontz
Okay.
and Stephen King, of course.
Yeah.
Margaret Atwood's Alias Grace was one that really struck a chord. And as well as Animal Farm, I read that when I was 11. And that was an interesting one because that's a college book, or at least at the very least, a high school book. And I was reading that when I was 11. And it was a very conceptual, like thinking outside the box kind of thing. I've also read the Scythe series. I can't remember the name of the Neil, I can't say his last name, I butcher it.
That's
I
okay.
like those books that make you think,
Yeah.
make you question, what is the and then of course, I mean, I bawled my eyes out when I read Where the Red Fern Grows.
Mm,
So
yeah.
that's taught me how to the importance of putting emotions into your books.
Yeah, yeah. Those are good. There's several that you just mentioned that I haven't read. Where the Red Fern Grows, I've read that and seen the movie. Tearjerker for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you read is all the books you read, are they more fiction, or do you read nonfiction books as well from time to time?
Not unless I have to. I only
Yeah,
read fiction if unless I absolutely have to, I won't read nonfiction.
yeah.
Or
Interesting.
I try to stay away from it just because for one thing, unless it's something that I really need for my life, it's
Yeah,
fills my brain and I only have so much space in there.
yeah,
I wanna dream, I wanna relax, and for me, reading is relaxing, but if
yeah,
I'm, trying to learn something, it's not relaxing anymore.
yeah.
And a lot of like, I don't even watch the news even just because there's so much negativity out there as well, so I try to steer clear of that.
Yeah. No, super interesting. I'm learning that when I started to really enjoy reading personally, I was reading a lot of nonfiction, and then I quickly realized I need to incorporate more fiction into my
Mm.
reading. I read a
Yes.
lot of nonfiction. I needed to incorporate more fiction to kind of give my brain a break
Yes.
and to enjoy like a story and kind of get lost. And so I found myself, I'm reading more and more fiction than nonfiction lately just because it's enjoyable. Like you said, you dream, you create, and it just kind of expands the way your brain opens up a little bit. So, but I always, some people I didn't know if you maybe, if there were some writers you felt like you want to know more about. So they had like a story about them out there or something. But I'm just always curious what people are interested in reading and kind of like what their personal bookshelves are filled with.
I personally and I mean, other people don't, but I personally stay away from, like, biographies of people that I do read, like, I know that, Margaret Atwood has a biography of herself, and I find her a very interesting person, but I don't wanna read it simply because, when we're reading these fictions, we kinda think about these characters as like, we think about the author as being part of these characters and stuff, and
Yeah.
when it's like meeting your hero and realizing that they are not the person that they portray.
Yeah. So you don't even want to go down that
I
path.
don't
Just
wanna
keep
go
what
down
you've
that. I wanna
created.
step in my imagination. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember growing up and realizing I can't remember exactly how old I was, but that Anne of Green Gables is not a real character, and I was heartbroken,
Yeah.
I
And you're
thought
like,
she was a
never
real
again.
person.
I'm gonna try and
Yeah,
figure this out.
yeah.
That's interesting. Well, you put that very good because you're the first person that has said that. Like, I don't read this because I don't want to know different than what I've created this character or this person as. And that's kind of interesting because I think I've done that before, but now that you've actually explained it, I think I'll do it even more now where I'll be like, I don't wanna know anything else about them. I just because I think this way and it's very awesome, I just wanna keep them awesome.
I mean, it's just like, well, I mean, I'm going through this with my kids, and spoiler alert, if there's any kids watching, it's like learning what Santa's not real. It's like
Yeah.
loses a bit of the magic.
Yeah, that's a great way. Yeah, keep the magic. Don't eliminate it. No, that's a perfect way to put that. Well, Jennifer, it has been such a pleasure to talk with you, and I am so honored to put your books and spotlight them. And now that we've met, and I know you're working on future books in the series, I can't wait for those to come out and to also spotlight them, and to also see your other projects when you eventually come around to publishing additional work. And so as those come out, we'll have to do another episode so we could talk about your
Absolutely.
new books as well.
Yeah. Now that I overcame that fear and I've been published, there's no stopping me now.
That's right, that's right. You've got plenty more to
Yeah.
do, and so but Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, and again, just can't wait to see all that you do. Keep doing it, keep spreading your positivity, and, just can't wait to read all of your work.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.